Hey, you there? Oh, good.
Yeah, all set.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. What's up, everybody? Apparently, it did something weird, but this is Sports Insiders. Stand by. And welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Sports Insiders. Let me get this music going real quick. But we are your hosts. It's been a couple of weeks, but we're back. But we are your hosts, Denzel Snipes, along with the numbers guy himself, Sean Russey. You are watching us from the Sideline Sports and Entertainment Network. And as soon as I get that, okay, here we go. All right. So, with that being said, we got some catching up. You know what I mean? So, what we got going on is we got some trade deadline stuff going on. We got some trade deadline stuff going on here. Here we go. All right, cool. And so, with that being said, by the way, shout out to our guys, JT, James Tatum, and John Shear, who is currently at the NFL Hall of Fame. They're covering it this week. Tonight, football is back. I consider football is back whenever there's a damn game on TV. So that's not the UFL, and I actually like the UFL. But yes, we got Panthers and Cardinals in the Hall of Fame game tonight. And so, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and go right into these topics real quick. So, with that being said, we getting off of football for a second, but we'll be right back to that. We got some MLB trade deadline news. So I'm pretty sure everybody has heard hell he's already had his first start. Yeah, I'm talking about Tariq Skubal, right? So the two-time reigning AL Cy Young winner was the biggest player move. Detroit got outfielders Zahir Hope and right-hand pitchers River Ryan and Brady Smith, including two MLB top 100 prospects. The Red Sox got catcher Adley Reuschman from the Orioles in another huge move. Boston also got Jake Rogers and with some money along with Baltimore, excuse me, landed Anthony Ayenson, Kyson Witherspoon, Indy Azakar, Carlos Narvaez, and a player to be named later. So trading a three-time All-Star catcher inside the AL East was the biggest surprises. You know, you kind of figure it's like trading within your division, which is an absolute no-no in the NFL. Trading within your conference, you try not to do that. But Sean, your thoughts about the first two acquisitions that we mentioned?
Yeah, so and then like you said, even really any sport. I mean, I think hockey maybe gets away with it a little more because the impact is definitely a little bit less. Um, but once you trade in division like that, if you can hold them for ransom like that, then you go ahead and do it. And that's essentially what the Orioles did here. Is they really held up the Red Sox for an extra price that they probably wouldn't have held teams outside of Division Two. But you
Right.
gotta you gotta put that little tax on it because if that guy's gonna come back and bite you in the ass 2-3 years from now, at least you want it worth your trouble. In
Yeah.
terms of the Dodgers, you know, the more guys they acquire, the more chatter we're going to hear about a salary cap. And I know there's been a lot of things flying this week in terms of they really shouldn't be able to put together this type of team. But it is kind of getting insane what they can do out there with the no salary cap world that we live in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this right here definitely is going to elicit some talk, with some people even being paranoid of a lockout. So, in other news, we've got the Phillies acquiring second baseman Luis Arraez from the Giants. Philly, they added a three-time batting champion and reliever Caleb Killian for pitching prospects Ramon Marquez and Marty Gayer. Arraez, he was leading the National League with a 3.24 batting average by the time the deal was completed. So that's not a bad acquisition on that one. The Padres went into reload mode, San Diego acquired Casey Mize from Detroit, and Detroit is just having a fire sale right now. And former Cy Young winner Robbie Ray from San Francisco, Mize carried a 2.70 earned run average, while Ray had a 3.08. He'd been one of baseball's hottest starters since entering the deadline. And then you also got the Cubs adding Kevin Gausman, Clay Holmes, and Braxton Garrett. I thought Clay Holmes was actually a pretty decent addition. Granted, yes, he's 4-4, but he's also coming. I'm sorry, Sean, from the Mets. So how many of those games did the offense blow it for him? But he was coming in with a sub-3 earned run average, I think about 45 strikeouts. So not a bad. He was one of the few that was actually doing work on that squad. And they also got Braxton Garrett. So Chicago really attacked the injury-depleted rotation. I do mean injury-depleted. You've heard it on Confidential. So they got Gausman from Toronto, Holmes from the Mets. The Mets received highly regarded infield prospect Jefferson Rojas for Holmes, and outfielder Tyrone Taylor. Sean, your thoughts about the last few?
Yeah, I mean, so for the Casey Holmes deal, it kind of reminds me of when James Shield got moved from the Rays, where you knew he was a great pitcher, but the lineup just wasn't there to support it. So I think it's a great pickup, especially given the fact that Milwaukee, obviously is a very high scoring team, but that, again, we've talked about it before on the show, and we'll do another analytics update here in a couple weeks. That has not translated well for Milwaukee in the playoffs. So, Chicago stacking on pitching, is kind of hitting right where Milwaukee struggles in the playoffs, which is to continue to play, the ball they play in the regular season. But I do like the additions, especially the three of them together. I think it's a great boost, to what is going to be going on. And I know they didn't do too much, but the Pirates very quietly are right there. And everybody better watch out for what Pittsburgh is doing, because no one other than, everybody wants to talk about the pitcher there. We know who it is. But, the Pirates quietly are putting together a very solid season and are right there in the hunt. And are one of the better teams record-wise, since like July 1st. So that's something to watch out for. And that's probably why as well the Cubs went out and added some weapons, because they're going to be chasing off from the tail as well. The Rays getting Peralta from the Mets as well. The Mets are now cleaning house. I figured they were not going to move off Soto or Lindor. At this point, that you kind of have to hold those two. And same with Bichette, obviously, since they just got him. And it seems like the Mets are basically undoing some of what they thought was going to work. And obviously now you're in a place where you need to shelve the minor league cupboard down there, and they've done that well here. But again, I don't even really expect most of those players to play for the Mets. They'll trade them for veterans this offseason, and we'll continue this cycle of being horrendous.
You know what? It's really, because you figure the Mets. I mean, they've had a couple of NLCS appearances, and it's just like the championship window. Like it just, even with losing the polar bear, they still should be more competitive than what they are. We can't blame what division they're in, because obviously they've been successful. I remember one year they were up 10 on the second placer before giving up that comeback. But still, at one point in time, the Mets were actually good, okay? They were even holding their own in a tough NL East division. You're staring down the Brave. You're staring down the Phillies. Washington is actually looking formidable this year. They might steal a wild card. Miami is known to give you fits. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, man. What do you think happened with the Mets ultimately?
I really think they've done it before, and it's backfired before. I think they look across town and they're like, oh, we got to keep up. But that's not how the Mets have competed well before. Very similar to teams dropping in stars. The Mets, when they were making it in the mid 2010s, they dropped in, Carlos Beltran, and then all of a sudden they pushed to the NLCS. They lost there, but they didn't just go out and stack the roster. It was a little, here's a piece, here's a piece, here's a piece. Unlike what we saw this offseason, which is they went out and played like they're the Yankees. And I think also they tried to just change the fundamentals of who they are too much. They went after all these guys that were batting average guys, which I understand you're trying to balance the lineup, but you may have gone too far that direction in one swing versus installing small pieces and seeing if those pieces work versus installing like 8 new pieces, I think it was, in terms of bats in the offseason. And kind of that's a total overhaul.
Yeah,
And it just didn't work out for them.
yeah, no, indeed, and it's something's got to shake. I mean, it's pretty much all but over for the Mets, but they have to do some thinking about how to approach things come next season. Starting out the way that they did didn't really do any favors neither. But I'm gonna finish up with the rest of these right here. So the Yankees acquired Luis Garcia Jr. and Heliot Ramos. Garcia gives New York a left-handed power bat after hitting 23 homers. Not bad. Ramos adds a controllable right-hand outfielder during the injury-heavy stretch for the Yankees lineup. The Rays acquired right-hand pitcher Freddie Peralta from the Mets. So Tampa added a two-time All-Star to already strong rotation. You figure this is a Tampa Bay team that is still in contention for the division. I think that they'll make it either the division winner or a wild card. And you said it a long time ago, Sean. Tampa has no problem beating you in close games. They go up 2 runs and play defense.
And they're fine with bunting you. If they get a single, they're fine with bunting him over and sacrificing
Yes.
him over, and then see if they can do something with 2 outs.
Yep.
They play it differently.
They're very, very conservative team. But New York also received 3 Rays aspects: Aiden Smith, Gary Gilhill, and Emilian Petrie. So the Guardians actually ended up picking up Foster Griffin, Joe Adele, and Nathaniel Lowe. So Cleveland went on to add an all-star starting pitcher in Griffin. They had they along with 2 potential power bats, giving the club one of the deadline's most balanced collections of upgrades. The Blue Jays acquired right-hand pitcher Jose Soriano from the Angels. Toronto surrendered the top shortstop prospect Arjun Nimala, Eddie Micheletti, and Angel Rivero for the controllable starter, while moving veterans Gaussman and Dalton Varsho in separate trades. Speaking of Varsho, Houston acquired Dalton Varsho from Toronto for pitcher Spencer Arrighetti. Incidentally, that move happened in the middle of our series against the Blue Jays. So all he fucking did was just switch uniforms.
They said walk across the field. Walk across the field.
He just walked across the field to the other dugout. Milwaukee landed Dustin May and JoJo Romero from the Cardinals. The Pirates got Luke Weaver and Kirby Yates, and the White Sox got veteran starter Luis Castillo from Seattle. So, Sean, real quick, your thoughts on the rest of the MLB trade deadline?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the Guardians, obviously they're playing a little catch up here with the White Sox, but I think the White Sox are just having one of those seasons. I'm not saying they're World Series contenders, but I think they're just onto something where they're going to at least etch out that division. I liked what the Guardians did, but I just don't think it's going to be enough to put them over the top. I think it's great additions for long term for sure, especially Adele and Lowe. I like their ceilings as players. So I think long term they've made some solid additions here that they can count on for next season. But I think the White Sox are just having one of those seasons where baseball says it's their year in that division, especially with the Tigers now bowing out. So you figure that's probably 8 wins both of them are going to get, during the stretch run here. So that's going to offset. So we'll talk about the standings more in a different show, but I just don't think they did enough to catch Chicago this year. In terms of Houston, I think they did a great job, especially since Toronto was kind of buying and selling, kind of what the Braves did last year. They sold a few veterans, but they also bought a lot of pieces. I think Toronto understands, they may punch through here if they get hot enough, but there's no reason really to empty out all the way and also prepare for next year at the same time. So I think that, they made a couple solid moves that, are both for now and for later. And then Milwaukee, again, we'll see what they do. It's almost hard to put a grade on any of their moves until it equates to playoff success. And then Pittsburgh, some solid pickups for a team that's going to be in the mix, like we mentioned. The White Sox, I like the add of Castillo, and I think that probably is enough to keep, the Guardians at bay.
Pretty much. I mean, in a tough division. And you're talking about 2 seasons ago where the White Sox, I think it was 2 seasons ago, they set the record for most losses, team franchise record, and then now look at them.
They were expected to kind of be at the bottom again. So, hats off to them for being, this far. We got 55, 60 games left at this point. Yeah. And they're still holding the number 1 spot. So, we're 100 games in and they're still sitting there strong.
Exactly, and like I said, 2 years ago they had that loss record and everything. well, and I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to win it all, okay? But as far as quick turnarounds in recent history, look at the Texas Rangers. In 2021, they were a 90 loss team. 2 years later, World Series champs.
No, and it'll be interesting to see if depending how the first round matchups break down, if the Red Sox and the White Sox draw each other, and they're two of the hotter teams in terms of second half records so far. It'll be interesting to see how that works. Especially the Red Sox are super hot right now.
Yeah, absolutely. They have in a division where it had kind of been Tampa Bay, New York, Tampa Bay, New York, Tampa Bay, New York, and then here came the Red Sox, and I mean fast.
When we looked at the standings at 70 games, they were, I believe, 8 or 9 games, 10 games out, well under 500, under run analytics. They've done a complete turnaround.
They have. They absolutely have, But we're going to move on to our next topic here. By the way, just want to remind everybody to watch us on the Sideline Sports and Entertainment Network here on YouTube, as well as, let's see, JB Ellis' LinkedIn, and then also on Facebook. Follow us on Facebook, X, and also Instagram as well. We're working on our TikTok, but we will be back on that, no worries. But also, sideline-se.com. Go visit our website. Check out all of our great work on there. And now we're going to give the floor to Mr. Rusty because he would like to discuss NFL agent camp visits. All right, bro, you got it. Take it away.
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, John and James Tatum are out at the Hall of Fame as we kick off preseason here. But obviously training camps are still very much underway, and even as preseason goes, even though they transition more into practices, it is still considered, training camp season. So, as an agent, obviously we're checking in with our clients at this point. My main question is, are you feeling okay? How's the body after 6 months off? Do we have any nicks to worry about? And that's usually, the main concern. Can we get through preseason healthy? And then we'll move on to other things. But, so after we check on the health, they've got camp, and then I do monitor like how much they're going to play. Like I know I've got a couple of guys that are going to play a lot in games 1 and 2, and they may not play so much the first half of game 3, but then they're going to play a lot of the third and fourth quarter of game 3. So I'll understand all that as well. So I'll have a kind of a snap count for their preseason going into the 4 weeks. And that's something to understand in terms of how much film, if a player gets cut, and then I've got to go, sell him to a different team and reference, where he actually played during the preseason. I could reference specific quarters because, as we know, kind of the whole roster is in there at some point during the preseason, whether it's for a drive, a play, whatever it is. And then we just, it's individual situations. Could you be cut at the end of the preseason? What are we going to do? Are we going to look at certain teams? Are we going to accept a practice squad contract to the team that just cut you? Because that's, unfortunately, that's what the NFL does, right? They have this huge cut down day, but then half those guys get reverted back to the practice squad and resign. So, we prepare them for that. And then the way especially I'm about to go visit one of my rookies, I explained to him, like, don't let this bother you. We even do this with our 8-year guys or 10-year guys. We make sure that even they have a plan going into each year, even though they've been around long enough. And especially depending how many teams that player has played on, we know what the year could look like. Hey, you may play 6 games here. You may play 5 games here. Do not buy a house this season. All those types of things come into play. And then just what does the player want? Like I have one player that is very much only text me when you need me. I'm locked in. If I have an emergency, I'll reach out to you, and that's fine with me. And everybody's different. Some players still want the weekly check-in, or definitely the after game check-in. That's something I do regardless of contact, because just want to see how they're feeling if they came out of that game healthy. But if they ask during the week, hey, I'm just really not going to be responsive, and that's fine. Go ahead and lock in. And then lastly is just, allowing them to stay focused. I don't bombard them during the season with a lot of marketing stuff unless it was something we discussed earlier. If something comes up that's just too good to not put in front of them, then obviously we discuss it, but we do try to let them just go ahead and focus on the field. And if they deflect anything to us, or if there's a financial manager they need us to talk to or instruct to do something, we handle all those things so they stay, in practice and on the field versus having to handle outside of football stuff during the season. Obviously, in the off season, it's a little bit different, and we come up with marketing plans in the off season compared to training camp plans for now. But that allows them to focus on the field when this time is here.
Sorry, I was muted. All right. So, well, with that being said, that is our guy Sean Russell. He takes care of all of his players. So, y'all holler at him, man. You might have to put your email or something on here, man, so we can shoot it out there in case somebody's looking for a new agent, man. These boys about to be fresh out. You know what I mean? So, with that being said, we're going to go ahead and bow out for the evening. Thank you for welcoming us back. We'll be back to you with more Sports Insiders next week. I have a little bit of wrestling for y'all, maybe some numbers and stuff like that. But hey, we will see you all next week for the numbers guy. I'm Denzel Snipes, aka Chapter 6. Later.